Okay. So, hey, I'm here with Ryan Graves, who's part of AIAA, and I'll let him explain what that stands for and what role he has there in that organization. And I'm excited to be here with him. And Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Julia. Uh,
Yeah, what's AIAA?
yeah, so the AIAA, which stands for the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, is a professional organization of essentially all the scientific and engineering professionals that are behind essentially everything in the air and space regime. So everything from aircraft engineers to aerospace engineer working at NASA. And what is really valuable is that it's spread across the entire industry, across different labs, across the government. So it's really a uniquely neutral organization.
Nice. So it's definitely a nonprofit.
That's correct.
Okay, good. And is it largely US focused?
The AIAA in general has membership from, I think, over 86 countries from their 30,000 plus members. Within the community of interest ourselves, we are not restricting access by nationality. However, our initial focus, which is around aviation safety, is focused on the US military and US commercial and general aviation. However, we do see value in communicating with the international arena. We do have a effort underway to kind of catalog what that looks like to ensure that when we do have aviation safety related information that we can share, that we have the appropriate bodies in place to communicate it to, not just in the US, but internationally.
Awesome. So that makes a lot of sense. And so when you made a distinction there between your membership and you say our community of interest itself, can you explain the distinction there and what role you have within the community of interest?
Certainly. So the AIAA essentially has three organizational units. They have technical committees, integration outreach committees, and sections, which are geographically located. Um, Within the area of technical committees and integration outreach committees, we fall under the integration outreach committee umbrella. We are a precursor to an integration outreach committee. It's typically somewhere in the 6 to 10 year range to go from a community of interest to an IOC fully functioning. We just hit a year 2 days ago, and we're essentially just kind of waiting for the vote to become an official IOC. So what that would mean is then
I'm
is that
sorry, IOC is this, say what that stands for again?
integration and outreach committee.
And outreach. Okay, so you ignore the A and you stick the O in there. Got it. Okay,
Um,
please continue.
mhm. So a little bit convoluted because we're in that spin up stage. We are a new organization. We technically categorize ourselves as a community of interest until that vote is complete, and that's in line with the AIAA rules and regulations. But once we're an integration outreach committee, that essentially grants us the authority to go across those technical committees, those deep technical silos, and reach out and build those cross domain teams from the thousands and thousands of engineers and specialties that they have within the organization. And so my role is I am currently the chair of that community of interest that we are pushing towards for integration outreach committee status. I'm currently serving as the chair of that committee, and I was one of the founding members of that committee, along with about 5 other individuals.
Great. Would you like to share what, or you maybe don't want to share, so this is a question. Would you like to share what brought you to this community of UAP community of interest?
Yeah, certainly. I was, people may know that I was a former F-18 pilot. You can see some of my cool swag in the back there, my helmet and the jet itself. And during my time when I was in VFA 11 as a pilot, we were seeing objects that we just simply didn't have an explanation for. Jump ahead a number of years, we're still asking the same questions about what those objects are. And other people are asking those questions too. So what brought me to the AIAA, the AIAA reached out to me and asked me to provide a presentation during their Aviation 2021 conference, technical conference. I think it was actually a special session on UAP and aviation safety. After I presented there, I was approached by AIAA to help them build this community and this future committee.
Awesome. So they came to you, they realized you were the right person to do it because you had the military training, you knew about the importance because of your own experience, right? And you were able to talk about it eloquently. That's what it sounds like to me.
I can't speak for them, but this sounds right.
I'm just going to speak for them. Okay, so what is the mission? And I know you don't want to speak for the whole organization, so maybe you want to read this or what, but what is the mission or goal or objective at the AIAA and also your subsection, whichever portion of that you'd like to answer?
Yeah, just generally speaking, and I'm not quoting here, the AIAA mission is, to essentially advance and create the future of the aerospace and aeronautical industries. And that is a changing field right now as more and smaller companies have access to space. And so it's a bit of a changing field right now as there's more what would traditionally be considered tech
Yep.
players or tech industry players moving into the field. When we consider how the AIAA views the community of interest, I think it's an opportunity to kind of bring those two areas together. So our mission, our charter, is to improve aviation safety by enhancing scientific knowledge of and mitigating barriers to the study of unidentified aerospace phenomena. And improving aerospace aviation safety is the first four words there. So we can do that, but we need to bring in help from non-traditional AIAA players. So our community has a bit broader reach than I would say the normal IOC or community of interest, whereas we're reaching out with this budding landscape and ensuring that we can provide the assistance that our group enables as these new organizations are standing up. So we view ourselves, of course, as a subset of the AIAA goal, but our particular mission is very focused on ensuring that we can maintain high standards of aviation safety across all sectors by further understanding UAP.
Cool. Well, that's really important. So you really do work with, before I get to the next question, just to clarify a little more of a deep dive, you have folks on your board or in your organization that are working directly with the US government, I would hope, right?
I'll just say that we're engaging the emerging landscape through various vectors.
Awesome. Okay, I'm just going to assume that those vectors include governments, private industry, academia, because those are the vectors. So you don't need to respond to that.
Yeah, that's an accurate roundup of generally what is in the landscape right now.
Right, exactly. So what kind of UAP related data do you work with? Are they individual reports? Are we talking about electromagnetic data, radar data? What are we talking about here?
Mm-hmm. So that's TBD in a lot of cases. We are devising the methods of which we will generate and or obtain data. Right now, some of our short-term actions are to very well define some of these problem areas, such as just detection and tracking, essentially, of UAP. What is the technical manual? What is the engineering manual around that? What frequencies should be looked at? What systems are best? What are the frame rates? All this information, there's no real standardization or publication of this. And so we're looking in the short term to build our own engineering standards around the detection and tracking of these objects and use that to illuminate information gaps that we may have so that we can really nail down the critical problem areas that are preventing further information gathering, whether that be overclassification or just other restrictions that can happen when working across sectors in the DoD.
Right.
Additionally,
so
that's kind of our general approach for engaging with particular bodies for, I would say, proactive data generation or organization from groups that already exist in this landscape. We also do have a number of efforts that we are considering ourselves for self-generated data of various types. So if that does not work out for us, we are looking to collect data ourselves, from hyperspectral to IR to radar and whatever tools we end up having. But that's TBD on the specifics, and about as far as I can go into it right now.
Right. I've been interviewing folks from the UFO Data Acquisition Project, CUFOS, Galileo Project, MUFON, SETI Institute, of course, SCU, Enigma Labs. I'm hoping that part of the landscape of interaction is with these sort of existing nonprofits that have a little bit of a history in gathering these data. I'm just going to put a vote in for that. I don't know if that's what you're doing, but it sounds like you're working with different organizations that you can't really talk about right now. And part of the purpose of this article is to show that there are different people taking different slices of the pie, different groups taking different slices of the knowledge pie. And if we could work together, we might get some more really interesting insights. So
No, I agree with that. The more information, the better, and the more ways we can look at it. I think there is lacking in the landscape right now a bit of leadership to a certain degree, and that's not necessarily anyone's particular fault. It's just how this is being stood up and the various amounts of trust that some of these institutions do or do not have.
yep.
And it's, it's being sorted now, but that's just the reality of the situation. I would also expect that going forward, we likely have the opportunity to bring people together outside of the standard academic channels. Are we able to bring funding to this community to enable this research, right? Not just at the AIAA, but across the entire ecosystem to be able to move the science forward outside of, whatever leash we're provided by the government, right? In a sense. So our goal is really to be as engaged as we can with the traditional gatekeepers while also pursuing optionality for continuing our mission without their assistance.
That was really well put.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. That's beautiful. So let's imagine that you or another organization comes to you. You either retrieve, you decide to do data acquisition on your own, or your organization retrieves data from or receives a report from another organization, where your organization is convinced this is really a UAP. Like this is completely unidentified. This is not foreign technology. This is not a Black project. This is really UAP. What does that look like? What kind of data what is the strongest sort of data case that you would can cook up in your mind?
Peer review, essentially, right? So, and that's a function that we're hoping to enable. Whatever the mechanism, whatever the process that the answer that you're looking for, we want to be able to do that, and we want it to be repeatable and provide that community and that framework of shared language that we can use to move the conversation forward and to plant flags in the sand behind us so that others can follow. So to kind of avoid your question, I think that we need to, well, actually, I'll tell you what, I'll just stop there. I think that answered it.
Oh, but you were going for the we need to. That's the we need to is so exciting. Can you know what? At the end, we'll get to hopes and fears for the future. And if you want to think of a we need to for that, that might be a good time to do it.
Okay.
And then you can think about what you want to say and not say. Is that okay?
It does.
Okay, good. All right. So this is, I think, almost clear to me based on what you've said, but I'm asking everyone the same questions so that I can get, different answers from people. So what kinds of explanations for UAP reports and data does your organization tend to examine? And let me give you an example. So some organizations don't even look at something until it's very clear it's not a satellite, it's not a meteor, it's not some weather event. Like they get that filtered out and then they look at it. Other organizations are like, I want to look at all of them so we can even understand the number of reports, right? And how that fluctuates with culture or whatever. And then once you do find something that's unexamined, are there particular hypotheses that you're testing out that you can share?
Okay, I might need to ask you for some help remembering some of the nuances of the question, but because I have a limited memory. But how do I approach this?
I think of it as stacks. Like everyone's got their stacks, but they're different stacks. Each report comes in and goes in this stack, this stack, this stack. So I'm curious what stacks are just in your mind.
Yeah. So overall, we want to approach this from, we are approaching this from the angle of aviation safety. And so there is a there is a sense of urgency as well. And so for us, we are looking to gather essentially two tiers of information in a way. And I'm kind of just talking, I view it as two tiers. This is not an official kind of categorization within our organization. Um, but there's the things that are immediately actionable that may not be known information in the context of aviation safety, right? So, hey, we just learned that, if we modify our sensors X, Y, or Z, we can now pick these things up with a lot more reliability. That's information we might want to get out faster. And so that is one kind of category of information that we're concerned about. If we identify that aviation safety hazard, for us, it's less about understanding the prosaic cases, right? We're not there to run those down, but we are there to communicate. If there is an uncovered new safety problem that is prosaic, we're going to, of course, communicate that. If it's a UAP related new information safety hazard, we're going to, look to our outreach committee to leverage the networks we've already created in order to communicate that expeditiously. But
Well,
then there's
also not
also
just a safety problem, also any mitigation that you discover, right? If you happen
absolutely,
to discover mitigation, you want that out there.
certainly.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
Next
that's
one.
fine. And then on the kind of longer side, which is the science around this, right? And so being able to better understand the frequency, location, the risk of midair. There's a million different data points that over time we're going to be able to further suss out the science on, just based on our ability to do peer review and with the large network of expertise we have. So I kind of view in those two categories. But at the end of the day, we're not there to increase aviation safety by having a better mechanism for reporting weather balloons. We are looking to better understand the UAP related cases.
Yeah, yeah, got it. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Are these too wordy? Are these too long? Or
These
should
are
I?
fantastic. You're
Okay.
doing great. Just FYI, little check. Everyone kind of gets concerned about these because it does seem sort of formal, and it's because I'm a scientist and I want to get to the details. But people are generally very good at describing, and you're excellent at describing the answer to the question. And then some people add a lot more, like yours actually we're on question number 4 or 5, and we're only 20 minutes in. You're speeding along.
Okay, very well.
So it's great, but it's also like you can add more if you want, and there'll be more at the end that we can talk about. We're almost done. So I already have the answer to what your organization has focused on in the past. It's been aviation safety, aerospace safety, the whole organization. So specifically, and I guess I need to ask this question. This is a past future question, but your subset, your community of interest, the UAP community of interest, has only existed since what, 2021 or 2022?
I mean, we've grown our membership from the initial founders to what it is today, about 30 people in the past 3-4 months. So we're fresh off.
You're 2022. Okay. So, but
we started strategizing as a group of founders last fall, essentially.
Right. Right. Enigma Labs was like that too. Last year started talking, this year actually made it a thing. Mm-hmm. So the part about what has your organization focused on in the past is already done. What could you imagine your organization, like if in your wildest sort of positive dreams about what could happen? This is kind of a hopes and fears question. What is your hope for what this currently the community of interest, soon to be, what did you call it? IOC? Integration Outreach Committee? Yeah. What do you imagine? How do you imagine that working? Like, let's tell the story about how you see that. This is a vision. This has nothing to do with policy. You could say whatever you want. There are no consequences, at least not for me.
Yeah. I'm very cautious when I hear someone say that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to give you any consequences, but who knows what the other consequences are?
Yeah. Always consequences.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, I lost my thought now.
Yeah. So
yeah. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, you're back.
We are a very new organization, but let's talk about that. So we have 3 primary areas of effort right now that are kind of dictating our short-term. I'll say the 0 to 2.5, 3 year kind of outlook. And those that's around human factors, hardware factors, and outreach. So human factors and hardware factors are aviation safety terms that people in that field will be familiar with. And outreach is really its own function, but assist with the efforts of the human factors and hardware factors subcommittee. And within each of those organizations or subcommittees, there are initial efforts that are underway that have helped guide my questions in the survey thus far. But those three categories of work are really how we're going to be structuring our data and our efforts under those categories. And so what does that look like within the hardware factors? It's understanding what hardware related issues or impacts that we can have to increase the safety of that flight or that mission. So does that mean better understanding of sensing? Does that mean better understanding of flight path prediction or predicting when or where they'll be? So these are all things that will help aircrew avoid these objects in the future and are very fair game under that hardware factors group. So, and there, there's materials, there's a lot of different things under there. Jumping over quickly to human factors, we are seeing efforts come up about tracking the health and safety implications for aviation professionals. Are there documented cases where pilots are being injured physically or in some other manner from these objects? And so we are seeing interest from the medical community. And same with the law community as well, as we look to ensure that aircrew feel comfortable talking about this. We've done a decent job, I think, on the military side, but I don't know any commercial airline that thinks this is an acceptable topic right now. And that's, a major problem. And, so where do I really see us going to answer your question a little more directly? I see us being able to maintain evolving documentation and engineering specifications around the different areas that we're able to approach on that hardware factors, and whether that's material or swarm prediction, or that's better sensing. There's many areas there that are going to expand into. On the human factors side, I think getting the medical field a lot more involved. And although that's not really the responsibility of our group, I want to help foster that with people from that field until they have their own representation that they can do this work on their own. And so I see us being able to start cataloging and better understand the implications, not just of having a midair, but any type of bodily harm that these aircrew might have. On the outreach side, I see us playing a leadership role where we can help bring together these disparate groups that have different actions. Since we do, consider ourselves to be very neutral with the large. Everyone works somewhere different within this organization, so we're not really aligned to any particular incentive scheme other than to work on this and be interested in it. No one here is getting paid to do this, so. I see us growing, to continue to answer, I see us continuing to grow to a decent number, maybe 100, 120. But really after that, I would see us perhaps shifting from a integration outreach committee to perhaps just having a wider group or grasp within the entire AIAA organization itself to try to bring in representatives from different areas to kind of play the role that a subcommittee chair would play. And again, this is what I would like to do, not necessarily what I think the AIAA would like to do. But yeah, and I really hope that we can kind of use that platform as a way to bring these groups together, to work together and to share data and to move the ball forward.
Awesome. Can I ask a couple clarifying questions there from your answer? So that's a beautiful vision, in my opinion. Regardless of, whether it's shared by every single person or just you. I think it's really nice. Thank you. Two questions. For the human factors, you were talking about health and safety. What about the human factors on the other side? So creating in sort of psychosocial environments where like in commercial aviation, where people do feel comfortable reporting these incidents. I mean, that's human factors. Report hasn't happened yet, but you're trying to sort of make it more comfortable.
Absolutely.
Is that also part of it?
Yep. Absolutely. And that's kind of a in-between function between human factors and our outreach committee. Ensuring that, and I don't have necessarily a firm strategy on this to read off to you right now, but absolutely, having these conversations, bringing other pilots forward to share their data, no ridicule, of course. I mean, just treating this serious. We don't have necessarily a de-skepticism plan, even from the very beginning, and that was almost, it was a strategy. I said it from the very beginning. I said, we're not going to pitch that we're getting rid of the stigma, because we're going to just act it. We're going to be the change we want to be. We're not going to highlight the fact it exists and that we're changing it, and so in a sense, we're not attacking the stigma per se through specific actions, but through, the overall strategy.
Got it. I think that's pretty neat. I think that's the way to do it. Yeah,
Talking about it, essentially.
Just do it. Change it. Not that it's easy, but it's worth it. So let's see. I had the other question. Oh, you mentioned bodily harm. What about mental health issues related to exposure to UAPs? Would you also?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's a
I don't think that's necessarily a function that again, the AIAA can serve, but having that pipeline with the medical community, and to ensure that, one, not only do we provide that, right, but also flip the skepticism that may be inside the medical community around it, where you're crazy, you're X, you're Y because you see UAP. That is, I think, an area that the medical community can help with as well, to stop treating it like a mental illness in some cases, or at least through popular view.
That's a long road, so my background is in cognitive neuroscience, and I've studied precognition, which is this controversial thing, basically predicting future events, and even when the random number generator is predicting them. And so, of course, people would say that's like psychic stuff, it's crazy. And so, I spent many years doing experiments related to that. And I have to say, I'm pretty excited that the most recent DSM, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for mental illness, no longer says that if you believe that predict the future, you could predict the future, you're mentally ill. But it was like, took a long time.
Interesting.
So yeah, I think those changes can happen, but it takes a while. Yeah. So one other clarifying thing here, we talked about mental health. Oh, what if someone listens to this and they're a pilot, whether they're commercial or military or otherwise, or they're in a control tower or something, and they're like, I want to contact these people and file a report. Do you currently have a mechanism to do that, or would they go through something like MUFON or SCU or something like that?
Yeah, that's a very timely question. We were talking about that today, and how much we want to necessarily be a data collection or a investigation type organization. I think that there is a very important role for us to play with the collection of pilot reports, so that we can have a full understanding of the safety implications, both for the human and for the the hardware, the aircraft side of it. And so I am a supporter of that. Though we need to draw the lines between those type of reports and perhaps FAA or someone else. We want to make sure that we have the ability to keep true to our current mission right now and not get distracted, in one sense. So we don't have the capability in any official manner right now to accept any type of reports, but we are, as a committee, considering and strategizing on what that future looks like. It's an active process.
Yeah, and from talking to a bunch of people in the field and organizations, it seems to me there might be an arrangement you can make with, where you have a kind of an email you give to everyone who wants to make a report to you saying, actually, we work through such and such an organization, make a report there. I don't know. I worry about mission dilution and redundant efforts. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I don't know anything about it. So hopes and fears going forward. You told us your hope, right? Your personal hope about what could happen, and you based it on what the committee's been doing. And I think that was really a nice way to do it. So the fear part is, what could get in the way of that you're willing to talk about or can talk about? And and how would you mitigate that? What could get in the way of these plans, and how would you mitigate that?
Yeah. Plus, I fear that maybe not even these plans per se. Actually, let me ask a clarifying question. Are you talking about what can get in the way of the plans I specifically stated, or in general with the overall community? And
Kind of like the whole effort of trying to understand UAPs and make things better in terms of safety. And yeah,
Mhm.
the whole effort.
Yeah, so I would suggest that any type of politicize or any type of red blue politicization of the topic. Sorry, have a hard time saying that word. Would be a major negative. Um, of course, it's going to divide everyone on the topic, regardless of their opinion on it. And so I'll just kind of put a pin in that piece. Um, Other things, I think a clampdown or a complete stop on the conversation of overclassification. Uh, that can be a big problem if that key gets unturned. It is what it is, essentially, right? There, I mean, it would take an act of Congress, as it were, which is not off the table. But if the conversation continued to be blocked on the grounds of classification, then it doesn't stop the whole thing, but it stops a major resource, I would say, for figuring this stuff out.
That's right. Well, you
Um,
put your finger on two really important ones. Is there another one?
I'm sure there's lots.
What
But
about private? I mean, one thing I wonder about, and you may not want to comment on this, but just something I wonder about is the role of private organizations if they want to push to have something classified so that they can keep technology for IP reasons, intellectual property. That seems like it might get in the way too.
yes and no, I would say. I'll be honest, I haven't necessarily thought about it in that angle. That's the traditional incentive structure. But I think I'm not prepared to make a coherent argument on it, although there's a lot of reasons why I think that that model wouldn't be relevant for this conversation at the end of the day. But what I do think is, I think there is opportunity um, for private money essentially to come in and to play a role in helping to finance this type of research, regardless of whether it is something that is commercial, something you can commercialize in 2 years, right? Like, no one's going into the conversation right now with expectations of commercialization that your suggestion, I think, was indicating, at least not I'm aware of immediately, right? In 5 years, like that, I would say that would be the goal, right? To be able to, like, no kidding, start commercializing on this. In a sense, I feel there's an often conversation about how it's a bit dishonorable to try to make a living, right? This is always a hobby. And I feel like there's a sense of a gatekeeping around there. It's a way of stopping it from becoming legitimate, because you can only be relegated to people that have, the time or the resources to donate their time, essentially. So I think that is something that needs to change as well. I think this needs to be brought into not just academic and industry, but with the general public, and the way that science is done in this country, and that's done with dollars.
Well, I'm so happy you said that's a beautiful statement. Because what I've been noticing also is the diversity of the field is really low.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost all college educated white men leading these organizations, except for Enigma Labs, where we have a woman leading the organization. And I think that has a lot to do with who has the extra time,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's a hobby, then that is a gatekeeping. It's almost like, it reminds me of, in Galileo's era, Galileo's job wasn't being a scientist, it was being a telescope maker, right? So on the side, he was using his telescope. And so it's those were the folks who could do it. And when things change up and the government, NSF and other organizations start saying, here's some money, scientists, only if you go study this question, that's when things really, really shift. So I'm right on board with that. And I think your point about private industry is well taken. I think there's a couple organizations I've talked to that are not nonprofits, And I think it's smart to have the whole ecosystem, for profits, nonprofits, because the way they're going to function is different. The way they can interact with investors slash or donors, depending on who you are, is different. And you need both. And so, but it would be a shame if that got split apart with polarization. And I think you made a really good point there. And I vote for it not happening. I vote for us continuing to move forward. My vote doesn't count, but I vote for that anyway.
Of course it does.
Well, it counts in this conversation, and hopefully both of our votes count in the world. So, yeah. Okay, well, that's it. Is there anything you'd like to add before we sign off?
No, I don't believe so. Thank you. It was fun. It wasn't bad.
No, you survived. I
Yeah.
thought you did fine. All
Thank
right,
you.
great. I'll stop recording. Thanks so much.
Okay, Julia.